Welcome back to Kings of Columbus on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, and a whole lot of feelings. Landis, we're talking about this roller coaster season for Ohio State fans, and we wanted to give our tech subscribers a chance to explain what it has been like. I was curious, Bill, with the survey I sent out about how people's views about national championships and the Michigan game and things may have been impacted, adjusted, changed by what has happened this season. But this is mostly going to be, it's not a venting session because it's like, is it happy venting? Happy venting, everyone. Like, what do you call it when it's like, I have to get this joy out of me. This joy is killing me. I must release it. That's what this is.
Yeah, I think happy venting's right. Happy venting with a, I don't know, a touch of whatever frustrations made the jubilance all that much better, right?
Yeah. And so it's weird. Some of this, it's a weird season to take in. This is advice off the top that I think maybe everybody could take, because it's hard to do something like this, but it's really smart, as it turns out. This is Ethan. Before the season started, I started an Ohio State 2024 football season journal. I was very excited about the potential of this team and wanted to document the season so I could look back on the journey if they won it all, like I believe they could and would. I have been documenting my feelings before and after each game, along with the score prediction and other things to capture a snapshot of game day. The early weeks are filled with excitement and wanting to see growth. After the Oregon game, I was disappointed but not devastated by a 1-point loss on the road to a good team. There was continued apprehension after the Nebraska game, and then the excitement and confidence returned and peaked with the performance against Indiana, followed immediately by the lowest point of my entire Ohio State football fandom. I was completely out on Ryan Day in that moment. I wanted him fired. I didn't want him to make it to Monday. I was texting my friends names of who I thought they should hire to replace him. As it became apparent that he was not going to be fired, I came to a decision. I did not trust the coaching staff, but of course I wasn't going to stop being a fan. So I refocused my fandom into rooting for and supporting the players on the team. I went into the Tennessee game incredibly nervous. I thought about going to the game, but I didn't want to be there in case things went badly again. I didn't want to be standing in the cold booing and yelling for Ryan Day to be fired. I regretted making that decision pretty quickly in the first quarter as my excitement returned and hasn't left since. Landis, football journals for everyone. New requirement of watching Kings of Columbus.
You know, the issue... The issue with football journals is that it makes our job obsolete.
Oh, right. Don't think about anything. Just tune in here and we'll tell you what to think. Is that better?
Right. Yeah. I was thinking to myself, like, oh, football journal, that's a good idea. We should do that. I was like, that is literally your job. That's what you do every day.
Yeah, I had another conversation with my daughter who's like majoring in media type of things about how being a podcaster has no qualifications and literally anyone can do it. And the more that people who were actual coaches and players whenever come into this business, the more screwed we are. So yeah, the last thing we need is fans being like, I don't need to talk this out. I'm talking it out with myself. I'm zen about the whole thing. Yeah. I'm just going to read my journal.
That's actually like, I would encourage it, to be honest, like, because I think, you know, the other way of doing that is like to vent on social media. But, you know, sometimes I think the things you say in the moment shouldn't be said out loud, but I think it's okay to say them to yourself and write them down and get them out that way. But maybe on the internet, it's not the best place to always do that. So I had actually never heard of a fan keeping a journal of their thoughts and opinions and emotions during a season before, but I rather like the idea now that I've heard it. I think that is a good way to enjoy a season.
And it is one of those things of like because you can't remember, but it's like, well, how did you feel after this game? It's like, well, I wrote it down. All right. So a survey, this is kind of, but that like kind of laid out. I think that's what everybody went through.
Definitely.
That's the whole point of this season and this episode is kind of what it was like for you to go through such an exhilarating and unusual Ohio State season. So I'll start with this, Landis. I started the survey with this. How high are you feeling as a fan about the Buckeyes during this playoff run? 10 is super excited. 1 is not that excited. So what do you think the average rating was? 1 to 10. 10 is the best. 1 is the worst. Excitement right now.
9.5.
9.67. So it's basically 10s, right?
Yeah.
How low were you feeling as an Ohio State fan after the Michigan loss? 1 is super low and sad, mad. 10 is I still felt pretty good. So this is like, if it's the most, it's the lowest. So what do you think that rating was?
2.4.
2.61.
Yeah.
Good guesses by you. That's the whole point. This season is currently a 9.67, but 6 weeks ago was a 2.61. Not a lot of seasons like that.
There's maybe never been a season like that.
They're like that. That is kind of the point of like, has this ever happened? Right? Like, how rare do you think this type of season for a fan base is for any team in any sport?
Pretty rare, because there's not a lot. I would maybe say there's, at least in North American sports, there's nothing quite like the emotions of Ohio State, Michigan. So to lose that and then to rebound to a place where your team is now 1 win away from winning the national championship, I feel fairly confident that this is an entirely new and unique experience for a fan base.
Yeah, I think that's right. Can't find it. There's somebody who made that point. I'll find it later. If I was better at this, I would find it right now. But like that idea that this is so weird that it almost can't be compared to anything. Trent is just talking about emotions. It's been big emotions all the way, high and low. Trent, I don't know how to adequately explain my feelings on this season. This is my first season back in Ohio after 15 years overseas. All of those involved waking up in the middle of the night. I hated 3:30 kickoffs to watch by myself. I watched the 2014 championship in Iraq and then went straight to work. Now I watch with my family, including our 2 teenage boys. It couldn't be more different. They are my reason for living. At the same time, I don't think they have ever seen me more angry than after the Michigan loss, or more ecstatic than during Sawyer's scoop and score. I don't show that same emotion in any other situation, for better or worse. After being associated with losing teams, the Reds, the Bengals, U.S. foreign policy, that's a good joke. That is a well-crafted parenthetical joke. Associated with losing teams for most of my life, the chance to see and share a good thing this season has been nothing but cathartic. Your sons have never seen you more angry and have never seen you more ecstatic. Landis, there are people all over Ohio State fandom and Buckeye Nation that could say the same thing, right? The highs and lows of this are the things that stand out.
Yeah, this feels like, I know we're doing a show about emotions, but like I think there's something to this dynamic. We can talk about maybe when the show's over. It's been and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, because like I don't view the Ohio State fan base as this, but like to be able to like observe the emotions of this has been rather fascinating. I don't think I didn't anticipate it being this, mostly because I just thought Ohio State would beat Michigan this year, and then probably win a national championship. But so like to be like in the middle of this roller coaster, which I think is the right word for it, it's fascinating, utterly fascinating.
This is, and I talked about this on the KOTN today, and I want to talk about it more probably on the Friday KOTN. But Jason is the one whose text kind of reminded me of this. I don't think it's a coincidence that the final 2 teams also had the worst regular season losses, because I think just like straight on how good you are supposed to be versus your opponent, the Notre Dame loss to Northern Illinois is the worst single loss. And then for what it means to the program, the emotion of it, the Ohio State loss to Michigan is the worst emotional loss of the season. Both teams turned these very low points into ultimate positives by using them to learn where they needed to improve. I'll remember the awesomeness of this playoff run for the rest of my life. I can't remember a lot of the Michigan wins in the non-natty seasons from 02 to 19. The Michigan loss this year was very painful, but in the end will be a minor footnote to this historic season, assuming we win the Natty. Now, minor footnote might be fighting words for some people, but that is things that I'm taking away from this that I think really matter to people, Landis. One is, and Trent outlined it, we have some other people who will outline it too. A lot of how you view things is about where you are personally in your life, and then how sports, how your favorite team, how a season fits into your life. Your personal connection to what's going on around you contributes to how you feel about it. And then for all of us, you only have so many memories. So what is really going to be memorable that you think about 20, 30, 40 years from now? And as much as the pain of an individual loss can linger like that, Landis, I think for a lot of people, the ecstasy of an overall championship season outweighs that. So some of it, the personal stuff can't be controlled. I will tell you this, there is a natty lean vibe to the responses here that has affected my view of this, because my view of all of this is only trying to reflect what Ohio State fans feel. Mm-hmm. So we only know that by communicating with Ohio State fans. There are people who this natty thing is a little different. And when they think about how they'll remember things, the run here really affects how they view it versus a single Michigan game.
I am greatly interested in like studying that more when the season's over, right? Because I think of course it would be that way while you're in it, and even assuming Ohio State, not assuming, but if Ohio State wins a national title, even in the glow of that, I think it would be different. Like 3 months from now, when you have some time to really digest it all, where will people be? I think it's going to be a really fun is probably not the word I would use to describe it, but I think a necessary discussion, but one like I actually have no idea where it would go.
So you want to do more feeling shows? You ready for the feeling? What's the thing you said we're going to talk about afterward? What are we doing? Are you on to something here? What are you on to?
We need to like really dive into this, and I think there's something there. We're interested in longer form, perhaps scripted narrative kind of stuff. I think there's something with this,
with the roller coaster emotions, how a season like this fits into the lives of fans who care so much and have such a low and such a high in the same year.
Yeah, it's like I remember like the HBO doc that they did on Ohio State, Michigan, whatever that was 20 years ago. Like a component of that being like, can you believe how passionate people are about this game? Right? Yes. That was the hook of it. It's like you think you don't know. And
yes,
it like the threads of that I think are being kind of pulled apart here a little bit.
We got content chief Landis on the case here. That's what's happening here. And this is not bragging. This is so fortunate for us because of the tech subscriber service. And then the other ways that we are able to directly communicate with dedicated, educated, loyal Ohio State fans. I think maybe we have a better handle on how fans feel and think about things than anybody.
And it's just because people are willing to let us in, like via
it's
these
not about us
that we're getting. No, it has nothing to do with us. We just we could have created a texting service where people just send us middle finger emojis, right?
Yes,
they have. And I'm very appreciative of like the thought and like the openness that people have when they're discussing this. So yes, I agree with you.
This is Craig. I wanted to respond to your ask for feelings and combine it with something you talked about on Sunday Sound Off. Which championship is your favorite? You mentioned how they can be generational. I wanted to share my experiences. For the 2002 title, I was a junior at Ohio State. I remember storming the field with my friends from Section 5A after beating Michigan, then watching the BCS championship game with my brother and cousins. For the 2014 title, I had my bachelor party planned around the Virginia Tech game, then watched the win over Oregon with my new wife, brother, and his fiance. So you watch one title in college with your friends, you watch the next title with your new wife. For the Texas semifinal, I watched the game with my cousins, my wife, and all of our little kids. If Ohio State can complete this run, I will have seen 3 titles, all at different stages of my life, and each will be memorable and special in their own way. From young college student to newlywed to father of 3. As I'm sure it is for a lot of people in Ohio, these seasons remind me of different points in my life and happy memories with my friends, my brother, cousins, wife, sister-in-law, my kids, and many others. Sports are cool. That's Craig. That's like, so this is the kind of stuff that like nobody can control, right? Mm-hmm. That Craig is marking off the progress of his life with Ohio State championships. It's like, oh, what was the cooler game? Well, like the 0-2 win or like the 14 win, but it's like, well, you're talking about college kid, newlywed father, right? Landis, do you think I will cry on this show?
Decent chance. Yeah.
Decent chance. Yeah. I'm going to try to keep it together. All right. Other survey results. So we went from, the point is we're a 9.7 and a 2.6 in the same year. Has the anger, sadness, and disappointment you felt after the Michigan loss enhanced and increased the joy you feel now during the playoff run? So this is kind of the thing, like I think this was your idea, like that maybe, right? Mm-hmm. It was so bad, it makes the good even better. What % do you say did say it enhanced it? Yes, experiencing that low makes the high better. What %?
77.
47.
Oh, okay.
So that is interesting to me. That, you know, like maybe like there it's basically split, but the idea that half the people are saying like, no, I would have been good. You know, I didn't need the Michigan loss. You know, like that surprises you a little bit.
Yeah, but I also wouldn't. I guess I wasn't thinking of it as like you needed the Michigan loss, right? So like if people took it that way, maybe I guess I could see why that would be lower. It was more of just like making lemonade out of lemons kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Not that you wanted it to happen. You thought it was a necessary component of this journey that Ohio State is on, but like it happened. So why not use it to help fuel your enjoyment of what's happening now? Is more how I did it.
Yeah. Silver lining. Look at you. Now you're looking for the always look for the bright side of life. Look at you. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. That's me.
So that's related to the team. How do you feel the Michigan loss affected the Buckeyes in this playoff run? Here are the choices, Landis. This team could have reached this peak while beating Michigan. So the Michigan loss had little or no effect on this playoff success. The Michigan loss wasn't necessary, but has helped this team come together and play its best. The Michigan loss was necessary for this team to come together and play its best. So what would you say? No effect, helped, or absolutely was necessary? What won?
I think helped won.
What %?
59.
70% helped.
Right.
21% it was necessary. 9% little or no effect. So I don't think I'll ever get to necessary, because necessary to me, I think it could be necessary if the loss helped you find something that wasn't there before. But I think this was always there. And I almost don't want to let them off the hook by being like, it took a loss. It took an upset loss to their 21-point underdog rival for the Buckeyes to really find themselves. Because then I would immediately get to like, why? Right. Are you serious with the talent you have? Why did it take the most devastating moment in Ohio State football in 30 years for you guys to decide to be awesome? So like, I will never get there to that 21%. And I leak towards the 9% of like, I'm telling you, I just think this could have been there, even if they beat Michigan. Because either I think they could have destroyed Michigan and said like, this, look at what we just did. Let's go keep doing that. I think they could have played a clunky game and beaten Michigan and said, hey, we broke the streak. You know, the kind of the stuff we're talking about after the Texas win. Like, it wasn't beautiful, but they gritted it out, right? But it didn't have to be a loss. We think Ohio State found something in a gritty loss to Texas. So Michigan blowout, I think you can spin that. Gritty Michigan win, I think you can spin that. And the idea that they had to reach this low, I don't know, man. So how do you, but 70%, I'm not going to dispute the fans.
Right.
Do you think you would vote for that it helped?
I think, yeah, I would vote. I would probably vote that it helped, but I do think there's merit to the 9% because I don't think it had to happen. There was a purpose to the way that I think Ohio State went about its business in the regular season, with I think clear designs on being a little different once you got to the postseason. And I'm talking like pace of play, maybe opening things up a little bit more. I think like maybe the more quote unquote necessary loss of the regular season was the Oregon loss because of what that did for the defense, in terms of changing things schematically.
Okay.
I think Ohio State could have landed on this plan and like this style, especially on offense, either way, because it seems like that had been on their minds all season. Now, I think maybe losing to Michigan, ignited that a little more. There's probably some truth to like whatever designs you had on this is our regular season mode and this is our playoff mode. Maybe you should have tried the playoff mode against Michigan. I think there's probably some truth to that, but so I would be in the helped category, but I think if you're part of that 9%, I understand why you're there.
This is Jared. Sometimes tough losses make the win and the story that much better. When the Cavs won the championship in 2016 and came back from down 3-1 versus the 73-win Warriors, the 3 losses made the ultimate victory that much sweeter because of what we had to overcome. However, while a natty would be absolutely incredible, it's not made better because of the loss to Michigan. We don't have the full bragging rights over those fans like we should have. So it's not forgotten about like in any other situation. If the Ravens or Steelers won the Super Bowl, none of their fans would have a thought about losing to the Browns this year. The rivalry is clearly different than anything else in sports. But regardless, I'm so hyped about the possibility of a championship and going to be paying the outrageous price to go to this game. Go Bucks. So like they're there, but I think that's an interesting point, right? And there's other people besides Jared made that point of, if this was somehow the needed motivation, it also is like giving Michigan fans stuff to throw at Ohio State for 365 days, which is kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Like that's why I kind of still feel like they're almost separate, right? Like it's an incredible accomplishment for Ohio State to get to this point, and if it wins a national championship, they will go down as a historic team to be the first team to do it in this expanded playoff era and have this hardest path. But like I get where he's coming from because I don't know. It's hard, right? To I know I'm the one that said like, boy, I bet like the disappointment really enhances the joy. But then I think when everything is like all said and done and you really like digest everything, there's that component of like, well, we didn't beat Michigan, still going to be there, and like Michigan fans, I think will be the ones to make sure that Ohio State fans don't forget that.
Yeah, that's the point our guy Austin made. All I asked from Ryan Day is to win the home games against Michigan. If Ohio State went 5-5 over a 10-year span with 5 wins at home and made the playoff each year, I would be fine with that. The reason the Michigan loss hurt so much this year is the inexcusable nature of the defeat. Ohio State was a double-digit favorite at home against a bad Michigan team while also not having a win against them since 2019. One of the questions in the survey was regarding whether the national championship would erase the feelings from the Michigan game. Michigan fans won't let it be forgotten. For every OSU post about the playoffs, there's a Michigan fan commenting about Ohio State's loss to them. That's something this fan base has to live with for another year. I can live with it if the result on Monday is a win.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's not nothing. That, you can, like, flash your national title ring at Michigan fans if they're doing that. But they have the thing they can say. And so it's like a tiny butt in an otherwise miraculous season. And, like, you'd probably have a buttless season. People would rather have a buttless season. I kind of asked about that, too. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But there's plenty of people who are like, yeah, it's fun to fight and come back from things. It's also really fun to just destroy everybody and leave no doubt. That's fun too.
No, it is. And I think that's going to be the thing maybe that some people struggle with after the season's over. If Ohio State wins a national championship, it's like how do you absorb those messages for Michigan fans? Like how much does it matter to you now? Like that is the new world that Ohio State fans have not had to live in.
Yeah.
And I suppose like Michigan fans, like, because there's certainly a possibility that the inverse of that ends up happening to them down the road, right? That it's just a new way to think about this rivalry and what it all should mean. And I'm not telling people how they should or shouldn't feel. I'm just assuming that because this is new and people have not had to process it this way before, that it could be challenging for some. And I think for many people, it's probably not challenging. It's probably black and white. Championship's awesome. Got to beat Michigan. As long as Michigan fans can throw that in my face, I'm going to be annoyed by it. But then there has to be people in the middle there too that I think are going to have to make some choices about how this all fits into the way that they absorb the college football season.
And I want to make clear, this is not like a wallowing in the negative attempt at a show. We are just acknowledging the very real emotions of this entire journey for Ohio State fans. And I think it's interesting for fans to share that with each other, because you've all been through the same thing. You've reacted to it differently. But I think we're taking this moment in time before this national championship game to take a step back and look at the entire season holistically. And there are far more ups than downs. And this last stretch is unbelievable. The Joe Rexrode from The Athletic wrote a column about this today, and he called me the other day on the phone, and we talked about it. It's in The Athletic, and one of the other people quoted in the article like reached out to me, and like he talked to some fans who again had sort of gone through this, but like, it's one of those things. I talked to Joe for half an hour, and he used 2 quotes, which is what we all do as journalists. So I was like, I gave him 14 nuggets of gold, and like that's what you think as an interviewee. But one of the things he did quote me on is like, this is the greatest month in Ohio State history. And like that, I think, is indisputable, Landis. And that is a thing. And we'll get to it. Everything we talk about is like, we're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. The idea that the national championship pursuit is not a game and it's not 2 games, it's a separate journey. This is a 4-game Ohio State journey. That is affecting people. And that is so new. It's part of what you're talking about. It's hard for people to process yet. But that it's like you have 4 tent poles. Win. Monday night opportunity to win versus 1 bad game against Michigan. That factors in.
It does, yeah, and that's like what I was alluding to when I said like there's something more to this, and we're picking at it right now for sure, but I don't know what it means necessarily to be like a college football fan in 2024 and beyond now, just because of how fundamentally the sport is changing. And I'm not even saying it's a bad thing; it's just like a new thing. But I also think there's probably no better way to get to the heart of that than to dig in on this.
Yes.
Right. So like, and it's just like whether or not Ohio State and Michigan fans want it to be, it's like you're the test subjects like in this experiment, I think, to figure out what this is becoming. Yeah.
They are. This is arguably the most interesting fan experience in North American sports history.
Yeah.
And willingly or not, Buckeye Nation is the test subject.
Yeah. Mostly Ohio State. Yeah.
Good luck. What type of season would you prefer? Ohio State as a super team, run the table and destroy everyone while winning it all? Ohio State like this, struggles and questions that lead to a team coming together at the end. What % just want to destroy everybody, Landis?
90?
81. So that's like one of those, like, isn't the struggle part of the joy? It's like, no, it is not. Yeah. So, 4 out of 5 people are like, what are you talking? That is one of the things. Like, it's like, there are people like, I know, like, you guys think it's interesting. Let me tell you, from the fan side of things, I want easy. Make it easy. Let me put my feet up while you destroy everybody in your path. Yeah. That's super fun. Sorry, the lead to your story is not going to be as interesting. Sorry, your podcast isn't going to have as... It's like, no, easy is good. So just to double check on that. But shout out to the 19% who enjoy the struggle.
But I agree that steamrolling everybody is probably more fun. How often does it happen? right? So like you
True.
could want it and like certainly prefer it over needing something bad to happen to enhance your joy then down the road. But I don't know if that's like a realistic expectation either.
That is still out there. Maybe 68 was that. That is still out there for like this generation of Ohio State fans, because 02 being undefeated, but it was like, oh my God, every game was Holy Buckeye practically. And then 14 was coming back from a loss and fighting to come back. The Ohio State, and again, it was closest in 06. Ohio State is preseason number 1, destroys everybody and wins it all, remains out there.
Yeah.
And it could happen. It might happen before you and I are done doing this job.
It could happen. Yeah.
And then you and I are going to be doing a million things of like, what do you prefer? Did you prefer this? And there will be some people who are like, no, 2024 is my favorite year because, right? So I'll be curious if and when Ohio State gets to the steamroller season, what people actually think in the moment, because the point that I have made after 20 years of covering Ohio State is sometimes Ohio State's boring good. And usually they're boring good against Rutgers and Maryland and Northwestern. But if they ever got to the point where they were boring good against everybody, and it was like, oh, cool, it's a national semifinal. Ohio State's favored by 17 because they're so much better than everybody. I wonder. And again, there are people watching this right now who are like, I don't wonder. I would love it. Shut up, Doug. My God, why do you enjoy making it difficult? But there will be people, if Ohio State wins this national title, there will be people for sure who look back on this and say, that's it.
Yeah.
Like whether I want to admit it or not, that was what it was all about.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's a generational thing, I think, mostly, but
yeah,
there's probably
okay. One of the things here that is worth talking about is whether people, you and I, fans, media, overreacted to the Michigan loss. So I asked 3 questions about that. Do you believe that you individually as a fan overreacted to the Michigan loss? No, it was a bad loss and I had a reasonable reaction. Yes, I went too far with anger, sadness, giving up on Ohio State. Do you believe that Ohio State fans as a group overreacted to the Michigan loss? Same thing. No or yes. Do you believe that the media / Kings of Columbus overreacted to the Michigan loss? No, yes, don't know, don't care. Like they don't care what we think or whatever. Like that's so. Let's just go with people individually and then people's view as a group. And I think this is something that happens in political questions. When you ask somebody what you think and what you think your neighbor thinks, there's always a gap there because you're like, what? No, I'm totally reasonable, but my neighbor is nuts. My neighbor is nuts is the story of America. So what % of fans do you think said, yes, I did overreact myself individually? Yes, I did. How many? What %?
41.
9. 9%. Me, Joe and Joanne fan, I overreacted. 9%. How many said fans as a group overreacted?
59.
33. So much more viewing the group overreacting than yourself. But honestly, Bill, I think the important thing here for our dedicated, educated, loyal Ohio State fans is even now with how good this team has been, and I don't think most of that, no, I didn't overreact, 91%. I don't think that like half of that 91% is because I never gave up on Ohio State. They're just saying it's not that they didn't react negatively. It's that they believe their negative reaction was warranted.
Yeah.
So I think to say that 90% of people believe their reaction individually was warranted and 67% believe that the group overall, that reaction was warranted, I think is really important to this because it's the thing, and I told Joe Rexrode 1,000 times, it didn't get in a ton, is I don't think Ohio State fans have to apologize. And whenever anybody else in the national media makes it seem like what Ohio State is doing in the playoff means that Ohio State fans were wrong after the Michigan game, I disagree with that.
I disagree with it too. I think that just means you don't. And I realize I'm saying this as someone who didn't grow up in Ohio State, Michigan. I think that just means you don't get it. I think that's all that is.
Okay.
If you think Ohio State fans have to apologize for the reaction to the Michigan game, it's because you don't understand that game.
I agree with that. This is Sean. Again, a lot of people, I think, just speaking for the fan base here. Forgive me, this is a bit long, but you might find a recent college grad's perspective valuable.
What was the media one? What was the media
I was gonna so
you're getting that? Okay, sorry.
I'll get there in a second because I think that's a little different than this. I spent 3 or 4 years at Ohio State as a tortured fan. Growing up in the great state of Ohio, I was taught one thing: beat Michigan. And nobody writes Michigan, but I say Michigan. By the way, you all write TTUN, which is great. Freshman year, Fields comes out of the injury tent. To senior year, Donovan Edwards hitting the end zone. The pain was indescribable. All I ever dreamt of was to storm the field in Columbus as a student. That's like a really good point. Like that's one of the things that's being denied Ohio State fans with the 2 straight home losses. Mm-hmm. With the recent Michigan struggles, I was firmly in the fire day camp. Yet just over a month later, I found myself screaming, crying, and hugging my buddies as Jack Sawyer rumbled down the sideline. These were the same guys I sat next to in utter pain and disbelief for Michigan and Georgia losses. I still get chills when I see the Sawyer replay. The slow-mo version set to Pirates of the Caribbean puts me on the verge of tears. Captain Jack, the Ohio kid. There's something so special about Jack. He's a throwback kind of guy, from running into him at parties as a young buck to saying hi while we both grabbed a case of beer. He was just another Ohio-raised kid loving everything in the Ohio State experience has to offer. And now here he is, a fully grown badass. I'll say badass. Putting the state of Ohio on his shoulders, talking with Scott Van Pelt post-game. It's everything I could have dreamt of and more. One more. Just one more. That's Sunrise Sean. And I do just want to throw in here real quick. One of the things, it's been pointed out by people that backyard guy making a backyard play in a backyard moment. Another backyard kid was out there blocking for him so he could score in Sonny Styles, which ain't nothing, right? Yeah. Which is another one of like, guess what? Sometimes in the backyard, you need someone to block for you. So anyway, That's fire day to screaming, hugging, crying. And there are a million people like that, Landis. And they're not apologizing. Like they're not apologizing. No. They're just admitting like this was the case, and they're not. And I don't think they do need to apologize.
Yeah. Why would you? Like I don't. That was like my beef with the Dennis Dodd article, because I didn't read it. I don't know if he said expressly in there that Ohio State fans need to apologize, but that felt like the gist of it, right? It's like,
yeah,
who are you to tell Ohio State fans they need to apologize for how they feel?
This is Blake feeling proud of this team more than anything. The seniors especially. The Michigan losses would have broken the average man. I all but gave up on them. It hurt so bad. But not only did they come together while their coach was getting mocked, they freaking dominated the best teams in the sport in consecutive games. I'm excited, still hurt over the team up north, but most of all, proud. And I think that's the main thing here is like there's room for more than one emotion. You can be proud and still hurt. Nick says, I was very low on Day headed into the season, but I wanted to give him one more chance with the roster he constructed and the understanding that him succeeding would ultimately be better for the program than a change. After the Oregon game, I was totally out. His team once again turtled in a big game, and he continued to prove he was incapable of providing any advantage in the margins of a big game. After the Michigan game, I was sharpening the pitchfork and dreaming of Vrabel coming home to save the program. That being said, I'm now back on the Ryan Day train and ready to build the statue if they win on Monday. Nick from Michigan, right? And that's the thing. Like, there's nothing in there, Bill, that I think the point is there's nothing in there that can't all be explained. That we can't have this thing, have sports matter so much to so many people and then not allow them to have varying emotions. So,
you're like denying people what it is to be human at that point. Right?
Yes.
It's like we are complex individuals with complex emotions, capable of having more than one emotion at the same time. And our emotions are evolving constantly. Why can't we apply that to a thing that means a tremendous amount to a lot of people?
Yes. Well said. Do you believe that the media and Kings of Columbus overreacted to the Michigan loss? 81% no, 14% yes. Doug and Bill were out on Day after that loss and went too far. 5% don't know, don't care. So that's 14% saying Bill, because we came on here. I think for us, we were at, I don't know if it's half, but I think if you rank, like when I keep asking these questions, and I'll get to it in a second. your overriding emotion. I think the number one was I was in on day, and then the Michigan loss put me out. And I would say that applied to both you and I. Were you and I wrong? Do you regret anything that you and I said on the Sunday sound off after the Michigan game?
I don't know that I regret. No, I don't think so. I think my position was that he had to earn it back in the playoff, and I think he has. So no, I don't. I mean, I don't remember every single word of what I said, but off the top of my head, no, I don't have any regrets about how I analyzed that. I certainly respect anyone's opinion who think we were the 14% who thought we were off base with it, but I stand by it, and he has done the thing that I said he needed to do. So I'm impressed by it.
Yeah, and I do think like in that moment, it's just I think we were trying to figure out what is best for Ohio State fans, right? And so I think we were reflecting that. And as we sit here, I don't know. I mean, I clearly was espousing the Vrabel stuff. I know a lot of people, other people in the media, think that was never a possibility. Vrabel does not want to be a college coach. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying, again, the thing that I was always talking about was like what he thought, what I was told when he left Ohio State. So maybe he changed his mind along the way. But he didn't take an NFL job until this Ohio State thing was straightened out. Until it was clear, it's like, no, there's nothing, right? So like this is because maybe that's coincidental. Maybe that's just the NFL hiring cycle working a certain way, you know, and it doesn't mean that 1000% Ryan Day is going to be the coach next year. Because the thing that, you know, the Dennis Dodd wrote about, I asked people about that. Like, could you see Ryan Day leaving, like going out on top and then Mike Vrabel's off the board? But like, that's a different thing to come in. So my thing on Vrabel was like, this program is broken in some way. If you had lost to Michigan and then had a playoff loss that left you far short of where your talent should have taken you, and like something needs to change, and like this program almost needs to be rescued. Nobody needs rescuing right now. So if for whatever reason Ryan Day's not the coach next year, and I'll be shocked if he's not, there's no reason he shouldn't be the coach next year, no matter what happens on Monday. The program's in a completely different spot than they would have been if they had gone out and played a bad game and lost to Tennessee.
Yeah, and that's all. I I picked Tennessee and was wrong about that, but that was just the uncertainty of everything after the Michigan loss, which is why I felt the way I felt about Ryan Day. Why my view on that game is what it was, and it was wrong. But I don't think it was like a preposterous notion either. Like it was down, it was low. Yeah, and I wasn't sure how they would bounce back from it. But to like everyone in that building and the Woody Hayes Athletic Center's credit, like they rallied maybe unlike any team has ever rallied before.
Yeah,
and now have put themselves in a national championship game, and they deserve nothing but credit for that. And it is, like I said, it's been incredibly impressive to watch them do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that too. We have a lot of content for off-season Kings of Columbus. The greatest roller coaster ride for any fan base in North American sports history. And then like the greatest rally by a team from a low ever. Like, I mean, obviously there are other things that would compete with that, but the thing that is so different about this, and let me get to one that this is a comment that somebody had that it can't be right because it's so late in the year, Landis, right? That's the thing, that it's not like the Notre Dame thing is so early that they had plenty of time to come back for it. That Ohio State was building to the Michigan game all year, and to play that kind of game in your last game of the regular season is weird. That's like the thing that's hard to wrap your head around, that it was like, oh, they're a completely different team. It's like, they should have been a fully formed team by week 12 of the regular season, and they still did that. So this is, to that point, this is Drew. Drew subscribed to the texts just so he could send us this idea, which I have such incredible respect for. The theory that best explains the trajectory of this season is the slow play. This has been the longest season we've ever seen in college football. With conference and playoff expansion, the season is more grueling than ever. I've been wondering about this since September, and it's not really something I've heard the national or beat media discuss. Is it possible the Brain Trust saw this season and had the plan to slow play the whole thing so that the team would be hitting their stride when it matters most? We've seen so many new wrinkles since the end of the regular season. The game plans against the best regular season teams look drastically different than what we're seeing now. And even the intensity has clearly been taken up a couple notches. Couple that with the idea that Ryan Day thought we could roll over Michigan with a vanilla game plan, and it's the explanation that makes the most sense to me. It may drive fans nuts in the moment, but I think it was the smart way to approach this unprecedented season. And then he also actually has a media thing here, which ties in, so we just talked about it. One more thing regarding the media overreaction to the Michigan loss question. As far back as the loss to Michigan last year, I've heard Berm and other beat writers state that if Ohio State was to lose to Michigan again, the day would be gone. Several have talked about it as if it were a foregone conclusion. I think the run this team is making serves as the prime example of why fans, and to some degree, the beat media, need to be very cautious about calling for someone's job before the season is over. You never know how things might shake out. I know everyone wants clicks and to have bold opinions, but I think it's the responsible thing to do to wait until the end of the year so that a more thorough and level-headed assessment can be made. Thanks again. Love your stuff. It makes my drives to and from work much more bearable. So, interesting media conversation there. What do you think of the slow play?
I think it has been a slow play. Like, well, it was a slow play with a unintended speed bump, but I think there has been a slow play. I also tend to agree with the like assessment of like how media should dole out opinions too. Like, you know, not speak in absolutes before everything is said and done. I think is probably good advice for everybody. But no, I think that's spot on. I do think there was a slow play element to this.
But losing to Michigan can't be part of the slow play.
No, right.
I'll buy an 11-game slow play. I'll buy in the let them lose era an early season loss where maybe you could feel like that wasn't them at 100%, whether it's game plan, whether it's how much you play your starters, any of that. Because we're in the let them lose era, but we're not. You can't, like we said with the SEC teams, the 9-3 SEC teams. You don't get 3 mulligans. You get 1. You really do get 1. Maybe you get 2, depending how tough your schedule is. But I just would say and so in future seasons, if Ohio State loses to a good Big Ten team, or if they come out and lose to Texas in the opener next year, I think all of that is applicable. I don't think it ruins the regular season. I don't think it makes it, oh, well. I hope we don't get to, oh, well, no big deal for any regular season loss for a team like Ohio State. But it's not a death knell. But you can't apply it to Michigan. So it's the last game of the regular season. Pretend, as you said, that the Michigan game is the first game of the playoff. So if it's like, we're going to slow play 11 games and then Michigan Big Ten championship playoff, that is 5 or 6 games where it's go time and there's no messing around. You cannot. So the idea, the idea that Michigan or that Ohio State would run a vanilla game plan against Michigan because they're holding some. Michigan is what you hold stuff back for. You don't hold stuff back in the Michigan game for the next thing. And again, God forbid they ever get to that point, that the Michigan game is not important enough to go all out. Then you have killed college football to some degree. But I don't think we're going to get there. And if anybody ever found out that an Ohio State coach held something back in a Michigan game, what would we do? So I don't believe that part of it.
No, that I don't think the Michigan game applies there. I think it was pretty evident at other points in the season that was very much Ohio State's hope. They quite literally played slow. So like in some respects it was a slow play in that regard, right? So and it's not holding things back as much as it is just like understanding how long the season is going to be, and you're doing a little self-preservation along the way if you can get away with it. But then you don't apply that to the Michigan game, and I don't think Ohio State did apply that to the Michigan game. I just don't think they played very well on offense in that game. Right. They played quite poorly on offense in that game, and that it can be as simple as that. But I do expect probably because if you can separate the Michigan game, I think Ryan Day's thought process is paying dividends now with
Yes.
like how fresh Travion Henderson and Quinshot Judkins look, right? Like you can't account for injuries, right? There's nothing you can do about Josh Simmons taking a wrong step and blowing his knee out, but you can try to limit plays and be smart and think about how you roll personnel and that kind of thing to get to this point. And I actually think a lot of that was fairly well thought out for Ohio State and is working for them now. So I don't expect that to change all that much. Maybe there's a question of like, can you really lean into that in the regular season while Michigan not technically, like it is part of the regular season, right? Like, it's the same, like it's the inverse of the urban conversation where like if everything is 4th and goal, then like when you get to the game where like really everything's 4th and goal, you're comfortable swimming in those waters. If you're methodical throughout your season with a longer term goal in mind, but then here comes the biggest game of the regular season, like can you flip that switch? So that's the ongoing conversation, I think, with Ryan Day.
And it's an advantage, I think, now in this structure that your most important game every year is the last game of the regular season. Because like Red River,
could you imagine if it was Red River? Yeah,
like that's a different conversation, right? Washington and Washington State are playing non-conference in September now, right? So that's one of those like, okay, slow play. Oh, get up for that one. Slow play again. Oh, maybe get up for that. Slow play again. Now we're in the playoff. Ohio State is just like the first 11 games. I'll buy all this stuff that everybody's saying in the new world. But Michigan's the start of the playoff. Let's see. Do you believe the fans and the team are connected and together as this title game approaches? This might be just a thing that I'm interested in. I am quite interested in this. And I don't think I feel like it is an off-season conversation. Yes, the team and fans are united as Buckeyes, 81%. Great. No, the team is still a little mad about the fan reaction after the Michigan loss, 11%. No, the fans are still a little confused about this team and their ups and downs, 7%. So it's like 81% connected, 11% maybe not connected because the team's mad, 7% not connected because the fans are confused. I am fascinated by this because I still feel like sometimes the way Ohio State talks about stuff, and I said it before, like the Woody against the world thing, that's so different than Ohio against the world. It's a state against the world or it's a building. And you know who can't go in the building? Fans. There are gates up. I've never liked Woody against the world, but they have certainly leaned into it at times. I don't know that we ever heard Woody against the world until they lost to Michigan. At least in this
I don't recall. Era. I think we heard it for the first time after the 2022 Michigan game, right?
Yeah. So,
but I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it this year.
So you're around the team much more than I am right now. Do you think like do you get like, hey, we're all in this together now, or did you get any like we're still trying to prove the fans who doubted us wrong vibe at all?
I mean, athletes are always going to try to find a doubter to prove wrong, I suppose. But I don't. If there and disconnect doesn't feel right. If there's like a complicated relationship between the team and the fan base, I think that's primarily coming from the fan base side still. And maybe like Ryan Day's has some tough stuff to go through just like as a person dealing with all this. But I think I actually think in a weird way, like it kind of helped it. Like when they got back on the field on the shoe against Tennessee, there were a lot of Tennessee fans there, and the Ohio State fans who were there were awesome. So I think that helped cultivate a little something, and that I think has carried on through this playoff. So I'm in the group of thinking that the fans and the team are fairly connected right now.
Okay. This was one from Greg from the overreaction section that I should have read then, but again, I'm not as good at this as I should be. This is Greg. I'm excited beyond belief I had a chance to win a natty, but I'm sad at the Michigan game and the aftermath of it. I despise the loss. I loathe that it was number 4, though the first 2 they cheated and the third was what the team assembled through the gains of that cheating. But what was heartbreaking was the schism of attitudes within my own friend group about Coach Day's fit as the leader of this program. Many people I know saying finally he just doesn't get it, he's not right, he has to go, and other such heartfelt, but in my view, misguided reactions that I found I was more depressed than over that than even the loss, that he was depressed about like the way people were reacting, his friends were reacting to Ryan Day and the program. The ironic thought of he has to win a natty to atone coming to fruition doesn't address the unrealistic expectations that led to the attitude. He is one of the top college football coaches leading programs today. I wouldn't trade him now nor a month ago. Our standards should be high. But the, dare I say, Southern reaction, sky is falling reaction, an unrealistic viewpoint of how good we have it and have had it makes me sad. I hope people are a little more understanding in the future, though I also acknowledge how naive that is. We have to love our team, our whole team, even in the losses. What do you think of that? It's a pretty good text.
It's a good text. It's really well thought out. I guess I would say like there have been times where I have felt like, you know, the don't you realize how good you have it thing, you know, had some truth to it. But I feel that like, I don't know, after Ohio State beats Michigan State by 15 instead of 35 and people are pissed. I don't think I feel that after a Michigan game. Like I maybe I'm off base with that, but I don't know. And I'm not, again, I respect anyone's thoughts and feelings in this. I'm just telling you where I come from. Like that is not how I view that game. And it was the fourth one and it was a terrible loss. And like, they were favored by so much. It was a team that came back to do what, you know, to win that game and then go play for this championship. Like there was a lot to that I don't think I could wrap my arms around. Like, you know, yeah, it sucked, but don't you see how good we have it kind of conversation. I think that is maybe a little off base, but I guess I also on the other side of that understand, you know, if you're someone who just, you know, like win, lose, or draw, whatever, worst loss you've ever seen, best one, like you are behind this team and your closest friends who are also fans of that team, like aren't there with you. Like there's a bit of like a rudderless feeling, I guess, that's associated with that, where you just like, like, is this thing really going in the right direction? Like, am I, you know, I for lack of a better word, like blindly supporting something that isn't quite what I think it is. Like I get why that would create some complications as well, but I don't think the like forest for the trees thing applies to Michigan necessarily.
Yeah, I always wanted, like, me as a fan myself of the things that I've been a fan of over the years, I am not a back the team no matter what fan. To me, I think as a fan, well, and it's like if you grow up around Philly teams, you're actually from Philly. I grew up rooting for Philadelphia teams. Like you earn your booze sometimes. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm sorry, but cheer you when you earn it and boo you when you earn it in the hopes of like reminding you that I think you can do better. And so I think the thing that happened after the Michigan game is somewhat, for fans who felt that way, is an honest reaction or analysis of, I think this program can do better because I think other people would have won this game. I think in other situations, a team with this talent would have won and they didn't. And now it's enough. It was enough of a confirmation of a previous trend, if you want to view it that way, that people said, okay, that's it now. That it's not like, I hate this guy. I don't think I hate this guy serves anybody. But to say like, I am not sure he's the best person for the job anymore based on the results, I think now we're back to the overreaction. I think it's a very reasonable thing to say. And again, this is go back a little like top 10 wins for Ryan Day. After the Oregon loss, he was 8-8. And now they've won 5 more games since then. Penn State, Indiana, the 3 playoff games. So now he's 13-8. But after the Oregon loss, he was 8-8. And he's 6-7 against top 5 teams right now. But he was 2-7 against top 5 teams after the Oregon loss. And he's beaten number 3 Penn State, number 5 Indiana, and then number 1 and number 3 in the playoffs since then. So it's like, again, like he is proving something. All credit. But it hadn't been proved before. And it's like, I think you should give people time. You can't be like, well, 0-1 against the top 5. Get rid of this guy.
Right.
So it's all just degrees. But I think that's what happened is like the degree. So many people arrived at the opinion of like, that was it. That's enough, time. And it didn't happen yet. All right. This is the money question. What do you care about most as an Ohio State fan season to season? I care about the national championship most. I care about beating Michigan more. I care about Michigan and the national title equally. What do you think won? Natty more? Michigan more? I care about them equally.
Michigan.
Get ready to have your digital socks blown off. I can't tell if this is potentially a younger audience, although I know we certainly have some older people who are on the text thing here. It's not like people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s don't know how to read a text. I do think we might skew younger. Maybe. I would guess we skew a little bit younger. Do you know how many people said, I care about Ohio State beating Michigan the most? 5%. 55% said I care about the Natty the most. 40% said it's equal. I am surprised by that. I feel like that does not match up with many previous opinions expressed in surveys or in individual texts by fans over the years of 20 years of doing this. And I think this will inform my opinion about some things going forward. That if there's about half the people who are like, they're both equally important. I don't know what I would, like, of course they both matter. But if you're picking a side, it's 55-5. 11 times the amount of people say Natty instead of the Michigan game. I think if we did it by age group, we did it, in your 90s and your 80s and your 70s and your 60s, the older generations would be higher on the Michigan scale and the younger people would be lower. But I also think the playoff itself is affecting this for people of all generations. So we got to take this in. I'm taking it in.
As am I. This is I want to talk to everyone who voted in the 5%, like and ask them about their evolving opinions on that, because I'm sure that they are, or I guess in both cases, right? Like, because I think if you would have asked that question in November, I think the answer would be different. I think if you ask that question a month from now and Ohio State has a nice national title trophy, I bet that 5% higher. I think like
you think the 5%
there's a little bit of
cares
prisoner
about
of the moment.
Michigan would go up. Okay,
I think you have to account for a bit of prisoner of the moment, not in a way that would suddenly make it like flip it, but I think the 5% would be higher in that case. At least that's my assumption.
If we ask the same question the day before the Michigan game next year, you think we get different results?
Yeah. But then even like, this is the part of it that's fascinating to me is like within those two silos of people, the 55 and the 5, like I want to talk to all of them to ask them about how they've processed this and changed over time.
How long is your documentary going to be? Is it going to be like 1 60-minute documentary, or are you thinking 10-part series?
Maybe like one. It can just be 1 60-minute. Maybe I don't know what the proper business practices are. Is there? Maybe it seems like a lot of documentaries now have chapters. There's multiple episodes.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that.
Because it's the fan perspective. That's what interests us most, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We want to talk to the people who care so much and who live through this.
Yeah. And when I say, like, when I'm saying all this, it's not because I think you're right or wrong or whatever. I'm sort of indifferent on it. I'm just fascinated by the answer and want to know why you feel the way that you feel.
This is Jake. The best thing about this season is that the 12-team playoff has changed everything how I view the sport. Everything about how Jake views the sport. Before, all I cared about was beating Michigan, and if a natty came, great. With the playoff here and the ability to play multiple big-time teams and winning those games, that trumps everything. Beating dominant teams proves how elite of a program we are to the rest of the country. Michigan is a rivalry game, and literally anything can happen. Before a natty, even a 4-team playoff, it's so tough because who got in was quite subjective. And there could always be a reason to leave a team out, which meant Big Ten titles and beating Michigan mattered more because you might get left out. Ohio State did get left out. Those were achievable goals every year, Michigan and the Big Ten title. This playoff format has changed that. And getting to the playoff matters most. Beating other elite teams is more important, and winning a natty is what we should strive for. I love the new outlook, and the fact that Michigan loss no longer defines a season is beautiful because it's seasons like this that prove why one game should have never defined a season. Greatness comes in so many different ways, and that should be celebrated. I love how I've changed my mindset, and I've enjoyed this season more than any season I can remember. I'm 32. I love this team and this season. Go Bucks. That is quite a new mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it, but I am fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by it.
What was the texter's name again? Was it Jack? You said
Jake.
We're gonna come interview you. Just so you know.
Yep. Clean your living room. Fold the blankets in your living room. Bill's coming to your house. This is Chris. Before the season, I thought beating Michigan was a must-have for Ohio State to have a good season. That a national title would be tainted if we lost to Michigan. I've reversed completely. I'm surprised that I haven't had to try to change how I feel. Since the third quarter of the Tennessee game, I haven't thought about Michigan much. And when I have, it hasn't bothered me. I think one of the things I've learned about myself is that usually not having a rebound game after losing to Michigan is what caused a lot of the hurt. It almost always meant no shot at a title. Now that's changed, and the Michigan doesn't hurt as much as beyond that first week after the game. Flip, Landis. Because that would be the thing. Like Ohio State, you lose to Michigan and then you go to a bowl game, but it's especially in this modern, it's how hard are people even trying in the bowl game? It's more like that. There wasn't a chance to immediately make up for it. But, and this was, we did see some of this in 22, that even though they lost to Georgia, people did go into the offseason differently. That Georgia loss satiated some of the pain from the Michigan loss because they were so competitive. And now this is 100 times that, because it's not one close loss, it's 3 huge wins and a chance at another win. But I am fascinated by the shifting ideas here, and it's not just generational, it's structural. That the 12-team playoff is allowing people to think this way. One more on this. This is Ian. You guys sent so much great stuff. Maybe we just do this, Landis. We don't even have to do any more reporting. We just cut and paste all these texts and make a book. That's much easier.
That is much easier. Yeah.
By the way, all tech subscribers, when you signed up for the text, I don't know if you read the fine print that said we may make a coffee table book out of your texts and we get the money and you get none. That was in there. Ian, for how historically good Ohio State is, being a fan of this team often feels like yearly heartbreak. Expectations are always high and are rarely met. But every season is a good season with 10-plus wins. This year is that, but the new playoff format has allowed them to lose against Michigan and not derail the whole season like last year, when we rode that negativity to a 3-point performance in a meaningless bowl. This year, our hearts were ripped out. Then Ryan Day, Jeremiah Smith, Will Howard, Caleb Downs, and Jack Sawyer jammed all of our hearts back into our chests and revived their season after what seemed like a death blow. It is only because of this new playoff format that I am not still devastated from the Michigan game. Thank God for a 12-team playoff and Jeremiah Smith. That's like one of those at Thanksgiving. What do you give thanks for? I give thanks for a 12-team playoff and Jeremiah Smith. What would you pick in a given Ohio State season? So this is obviously related to what matters more, but now it's down to it. Ohio State wins the national title but loses to Michigan. Ohio State beats Michigan, has a very good record and exciting year, but doesn't win the national title. All right? Michigan or the Natty? What are you picking? What do you think? So we're going to get the national title won with the Michigan loss. What percent?
60?
84. 84. This is a shift.
Wow.
This is we are seeing the shift in real time. 84.
Because even if you account for like the prisoner of the moment thing, both pushing it up to 84, and even if that's like making it 25% more than it actually is in reality, 60% would be an incredibly high number.
Yes. 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 Really hard. Owen, a national championship will never erase a Michigan loss, but I will not look at a national championship with any sort of asterisk or stain. It will be a part of the story every single time it happens, but when it happens, it takes nothing away from the Natty. I cannot stand the people who think it takes away something from a season. It is an important chapter in the story, but the story does not end there. I have some concern about the Michigan problem, but that is a problem for next November. Meanwhile, I hope to be soaking in this Natty until then. Like that, I think the idea that this is the national championship is a story, and Michigan is a chapter in that story either way. Maybe it's your favorite chapter, least favorite chapter, but it is no longer the book. Because the thing, like our buddy Bill Rabinowitz writes a book every time Ohio State wins a national championship. He actually wrote the first one after they went 12-0 when they didn't have a chance for the national championship. You know what people don't write books about? That time Ohio State beat Michigan. Now, boy, we really should do something on this, because here's the thing. The Michigan rivalry in its totality, because there have been 1,000 things written and said about the Michigan rivalry. Are we zeroing in on this? Is this a true fact? The Michigan-Ohio State rivalry is bigger than a national championship. No single Ohio State-Michigan game will ever be as big as a national championship again in this era.
Yeah.
The rivalry is history and generational, and it's love and it's hate and it's memories, but it's a collective. It's not a moment. A national championship is also a collective. It's not a moment, because because people don't say like the national championship game. They say the national championship, which is a whole season. Mm-hmm. So if you say, what's the most important thing? Like, what's the most important thing to Ohio State? The Michigan rivalry. It's defining. What's the second most important thing? Winning national championships. But any individual national championship is more important than any individual Michigan game, which is where we are, which maybe wasn't true before, when you had to beat Michigan to have a chance at the national championship. Yeah. But as we've separated it, I've been talking about two paths. One path is elevated now because one path is longer. Because there is a path to the Michigan game, but really the Michigan game is 3.5 hours. Whereas the national championship is a longer thing. Landis, okay. Chief Content Officer Bill Landis. We're going to get rich off this. God, these smart texters are making us rich. Thank you, texters. If Ohio State, this is, I think, a thing going forward that matters. If Ohio State wins the national championship, I said what they would do, right? 84-16, right? Yeah. Natty, lose to Michigan is 84. Mm-hmm. Beat Michigan, not win the Natty is 16%. If Ohio State wins the national championship, will fans give Ryan Day more leeway the next time Ohio State loses to Michigan or loses a different big game? Yes or no? With the Natty ring on his finger, will he get more leeway for any other future loss?
Yeah, I think so.
What percent said yes?
65?
67. You nailed it. I think this is like a huge thing going forward. It's the thing I've said. You gain capital. So Tress did it in year 2. Urban did it in year 3. Day's not doing it until year 6. So then it makes all those things, but now he's going to have the ultimate high. So any low, he has the ultimate high. And there will be a faith in him, because I think part of the deal with Day was like, if there's a lingering big game thing, I don't know if he's a national championship coach. I'm not sure. But what I do know is he can't beat Michigan. Now, for you to be like, he's a national championship coach, there is no doubt that he can win big games and assemble national championship teams. And he's got this thing over here he's got to work on. That is a completely different vibe, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would. Yeah, it's just I think I said this maybe prior. Like, I don't know that I need to see Ohio State win a national championship to be firmly convinced now that those are two separate conversations. I think Ryan Day has already won enough big games in the run to get to this national championship for me to feel comfortable saying that those are very much separate deals.
Okay. How much is the Michigan loss still sticking with you? 10 is still totally on your mind. 1 is completely forgotten. What do you think it is? 10 totally on your mind. 1 completely forgotten.
4.
5.17. So again, it's like one of these, it was exactly in the middle, because there are some people, and some people are right in the middle. Some people have totally forgotten it. Some people are still really remembering it. And the result is it's exactly in the middle, which again is instructive to anybody out there who doesn't get it. That even the happiest, I think, are we not getting the vibe here that Ohio State fans right now universally are thrilled, excited, overjoyed, not bogged down in the Michigan loss and working out feelings about stuff. But then you can still be right in the middle on this stuff. You can still be a 5. Like, I think we're getting it. National media, watch this show. It's going to tell you what you need to know about Ohio State fans. They are complicated, passionate people who can think more than one thing, but sometimes you're just right in the middle.
Yeah. No, I think I don't think anyone's bogged down in it, to answer your initial question. No, I haven't. Like, we're talking a lot about it, and maybe the fact that we are is maybe bothersome to people as Ohio State's on the precipice of a national championship. But like, I think it's like worth like kind of getting it all out on the table as Ohio State is about to go play in the national championship game. But I have no sense, or very little, if any, that people are still consumed by what happened on November 30th. It's Ohio State's 1 win away from getting a trophy.
All right, last few here. A national title would erase the Michigan loss in your mind. True. Natty baby, nothing else would matter. False. Natty baby, but the Michigan loss would still nag at me. It would be erased. True or false?
True.
False, 57%.
Oh.
True, 43%. So again,
I love these people.
This is like, I think we are really, again, we just continue to zero in on it. They didn't forget about it, but they're not bogged down in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a different thing. And to expect them to completely forget about it is thinking about it wrong. How will you be feeling about the Michigan game in November next year? All right, these are the choices, Landis. Total confidence. This playoff run has proven this program is elite. Total worry. The Michigan game is an issue for this program until it proves otherwise. Uncertain, but lean confident and excited. Uncertain, but lean worried and nervous. So
I would say
total confident, lean confident, lean nervous, totally worried.
I think lean nervous.
Totally nervous. So again, right now, they're great. Next November, they are going to be freaking out. 37% total worry. Total confidence, only 7%. So the ends is 37-7. But the middle is more lean confident. Lean confident, 34. Lean worried, 22. So then like the confidence side overall is 59. The worry side is 41. But like more than a third of people, even with potentially wearing national championship shirts, are going to be like, I don't know if we can beat Michigan. So, which again is like really, that we're talking about separation. Just because you're wearing a national championship shirt doesn't mean you're not worried about Michigan. That really is, I think, really, and it's not split personality. It's two separate things. All right.
Yeah.
In your heart, do you believe there's any chance Ryan Day could leave Ohio State if the Buckeyes win and he chooses to go out on top? Yes or no? What percent of people said, yeah, I at least maybe could see him going out on top?
20?
30. So like it's on people's minds. Dennis Dodd has it on people's minds. That's not
Tastemaker, that guy.
Right? We're not there.
No.
I mean, who knows? I know it's been stressful for him. I know he's felt stress, but I don't think my impression would not be so of a championship team. But who knows?
I think there's been like too much energy apparent with some of the stuff they're doing to make sure next year's roster is right to think that he would walk away from it. Yeah.
Well said. Do you believe in the current state of the world that there could be too much pressure on Ohio State coaches and players about the Michigan game? No, it's part of the deal. And Ohio State, Michigan has always been like this. Yes, in the social media, high attention world, the pressure can be too much. Yes or no? Too much pressure on Michigan game.
Yeah, I would say people into it. Yes.
52% yes, 48% no. So again, pretty split, but people acknowledging what the deal is. What is an ideal way for Ohio State fans to approach the Michigan game in the 12-team playoff? I'm just going to give you the results here. The Michigan game is still huge, but fans can get over a loss by the time the playoff starts as long as Ohio State makes the playoff. So, like, I'm really not diminishing the Michigan game, but I'm not going to let it ruin my playoff, right? 54%. That sounds like the reason. I mean, like, that would be, right? That sounds like the most reasonable thing. You're not diminishing the Michigan game, but you're not ruining your playoff because of it, right? Is that the best way to do it?
I think so. Yeah.
Michigan game still means everything, and a loss brings a huge reaction. Like, it doesn't mean that you don't watch the playoff, but like, really, the Michigan game, 24% still said that. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Michigan game is big, but the playoff matters more. And the Michigan loss doesn't end it. So it's like, I mean, it's the playoff, man. Like, it's not that I ignore the Michigan game, but it's the playoff, 22% that. Or the Michigan game is just like any other game, and no single loss can ruin an Ohio State season. Now, it's just another game. What percent said that? It's just another game.
I don't know, 3?
0%. So again, just a reminder of what we're dealing with here. Nobody wants that. But the idea of like, it's still big, but I can get over people. And then a quarter of the people, it's still huge. A quarter of the people it's really about the playoffs, right? Okay. How much faith do you have in Ryan Day as a coach of this team? For Monday's game is for as long as he is here. 10 is total faith. 1 is not much. What do you think he is?
7.8.
8.41. People feeling pretty good.
Okay.
How much do you want Ryan Day to stay? 10 is I really want him here. I would be very upset if he left. 1 is Ohio State would be fine without him and would find another good coach. What do you think it is?
8.2.
8.75. So like they want him here even more than the faith. Like they want him here. Mm-hmm. There is a part of me that might send some of these results to Ryan Day. Not now, but after the game. Because I think you hear the bad, right? So, but I think you need to have a direct contact with the dedicated, educated, loyal fans who really get it. Natty faith question. We've been asking it all year. They're at an 8.91 right now. Your faith in this team to win a national title. That's pretty darn high.
Is it the highest it's been?
Yes. It's never been 9. It's been 8 something along the way, but it's never been 9. This is the last one. Which most closely matches your view of this Ohio State season? It's a wild ride. I've loved all the ups and downs. It's made me feel alive. Wild ride, and I've loved it. Wild ride, and I've hated all the ups and downs. It's made me feel nauseous. Wild ride, and I've loved and hated it. It made me feel everything. So, of course, the one in the middle won. What percent do you think it got?
70.
79. And then what do you think won? I've loved it all, or I've hated it on the edges?
I think I loved it all out one or hated it. Yeah.
15% loved it, 6% hated it.
Yeah.
So, but like it's all the feels, brother. It's all the feels. Mm-hmm. All right. Speaking of all the feels, you have somewhere you have to get. I have a bunch of other feelings to read. So why don't we do this? You go. There's not really going to be any more ball talk, and there's no more survey questions. The rest of this is going to be me reading more stuff that tech subscribers sent in. If you want to hear that and how your fellow Buckeye fans are feeling, awesome. Stick around after the break. If you are kind of good, feel free to go. You're not going to miss anything else. All right? We good on that? Can we do that?
Sounds great.
All right. Landis will leave. I will be right back after this on Kings of Columbus. Back on Kings of Columbus, just Doug. Just want to read more of some of this stuff that you guys sent in that I just think is so good. So we're just going to do that. We're just going to share feelings, and this is just you guys being smart and me being literate. Evan, I think I learned a lot about myself as a fan this season, probably more than any other season I can remember in my nearly 3 decades as a diehard Buckeyes fan. The most important thing I've come to terms with this year is what it means to be a fan during a championship run. The fun doesn't come from ordering a national champions t-shirt if we win Monday. We as fans don't get a ring, nor would we have gotten a pair of gold pants. Sure, we can brag to friends and frenemies of opposing fan bases, but that's hollow and fleeting. The fun comes in the moment. It comes from watching your team, the team you live and die with every Saturday, play in high leverage games on a national stage and extend its season while other seasons have ended. It comes from getting to care about this team just a little bit longer before entering the dark and cold days of the offseason. And it comes from getting to do this together with the people you love that share this lunatic fringe passion. Ryan Day talks about the biggest motivation for this team being the opportunity to simply play together just a little bit longer. I found that my motivation as a fan is to watch this team, my team, play together just a little bit longer as well. I wouldn't have believed it a month ago, but maybe the Michigan game doesn't have to be life or death. Part of the reason it's been that way is because that game truly was the season. You could not win the Big Ten or national title without winning that game. It's just not the case anymore. Do I want to win that game? Of course. And I think it might have cut off because like sometimes it cuts you guys off because you go so long because it's so good. But I love the idea. Of course you want to win that game, but it's not maybe life and death because the elongated nature of this playoff run and what you can share with your friends and family along the way. So I like the idea of fans learning something about themselves. And again, I would guess that a lot of you have learned more about yourself as an Ohio State fan in this season, more than any other. Let's see. Let's just do this one. This is Patrick. Seeing the team beat adversity on the way to a title is awesome and incredibly exciting as a fan. As long as the adversity is something other than losing to that team at home, that deserved a reaction. If Ohio State can win on Monday, I don't believe it will at all tarnish what this team accomplished. But when the season is discussed 30 years from now at the water cooler, there will always be a guy who points out, can you believe they lost to Michigan that year? It's just something we have to live with, but we should do so joyously. That's an awesome way to say that. You have to live with it, but live with it joyously. Right? Now, this is a little bit the other side of that. This is Justin. This one's smart too. Taking in the context if they beat Notre Dame, I'm mostly over the fact they lost to Michigan. I'll never get over the fact that loss pulls this team out of GOAT arguments. Greatest of all time. Like, can a 2-loss team be in that conversation? And when one of your losses, if you just have one loss to the number one team on the road by a point, but to lose to a 7-5 team, I think Justin's onto something here. Because I think they belong in that conversation. But you can't make that argument with 2 losses right now. When we look back on this roster with multiple NFL Hall of Famers on it, it will make that Michigan loss that much more confusing. And so, like, for the legacy part of it, I get it. I get it. Rich. This season has been a wild roller coaster ride. I can remember starting off the year being fired up about this team with all the talent, all the expectations. Things kind of sucked after the Oregon game, especially watching them lose on my wedding anniversary. But I still didn't feel bad about a 1-point loss to a good team on the road. Then the Nebraska game made me feel blah. But then I was feeling awesome after the huge Penn State and Indiana wins. Then what happened on November 30th? I can remember absolutely sick to my stomach all weekend, in denial, thinking this team was done. Not going to lie, it messed with my head come playoff time, and I had no idea how the Tennessee game would go. Well, whatever happened to those guys between the team up north and the Tennessee games, I don't know, but it's been an awesome wild ride, and I hope it continues for one more game. Love this team. So proud of how they have responded, and I hope they can finish the deal. So yeah, roller coaster, but it made you sick. Luke, our guy Luke H, sent a huge 3-part thing. And his main, it's so good, but I can't read it all. His main thing is that a season's like a road trip. And this is the end of it. I want to get in the car with Luke and go on a college football road trip through his mind. Going into Penn State, I had completely lost faith in this team's ability to win it all. Too many gaps, too many mistakes, but then something clicked. Down 10-0, they dug deep. They showed the grit and toughness that had been missing. The defense stiffened, the offense imposed its will, and they drained the clock on their way to victory. That compounded that with a great team win against Indiana. So now we have another one on top of it, right? It was like the engine finally purred, smooth and steady. Suddenly, I could see the potential again. The defensive dominance, timely throws on offense, and even the special teams playing sharp. The car wasn't fully fixed. Maybe the tire pressure light was still on, and it idled too loud, but the oil seemed changed, and the bug splatters had been washed off the windshield. Then Michigan happened. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I wanted everyone fired, torn apart by how wasted this roster seemed. A total car accident. A T-bone. This was rock bottom. Then the playoffs began and everything clicked. It was like watching a teenager finally learn to drive stick. At first jerky, but then smooth as butter. The windows were down, the music was blasting, the tank was full, and the road stretched out wide and clear. There was no more hesitation, no more mistakes. We were cruising, and nothing could stop us now. Luke! Write a book, brother. That's good stuff. Season's a road trip. They crashed, but here they are. This is a good one. I like this. Mike getting teased by his kid. My son was teasing me today about my complicated feelings about Ryan Day. I have been in and out on him multiple times over the last few years, mostly because it seemed like we were making the same mistakes over and over again in big games. That's why this Texas game was so important. It's the kind of game we never win under Ryan Day. If we win Monday, then he has proven he can do it. And the pressure, I think, will be off for Michigan. I am so happy for him. I have never doubted that he cared and that his players loved him. And if the team wins on Monday, then the whole fan base will be united for the first time in years. Team of destiny. Go Bucks. That's Mike. I love the idea if you guys would feel like the whole fan base and everybody is united. That would be tremendous. That would be tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. If that's where all of this leads, that's the best thing this could be, right? Fans as happy as they can be, as united as they can be with their team, that would be the best outcome of this. And listen, that's what Notre Dame wants too. But I think like Ohio State fans have been through more. Notre Dame's been through a lot, but Marcus Freeman's newer. They'll have more opportunities. Ohio State's going to have more opportunities too. But I think this is Ohio State's time. Like this is Ohio State's year. This is the fans. Everything that's happened, how much this season was geared up for. I do feel like in a team of destiny discussion, like Ohio State has a pretty good case for that. This is Jim A, who's great. Being the first Ohio State coach to win a national championship but lose to Michigan is a fitting summary of who Ryan Day has been. He's a great coach, but he isn't an Ohio coach. I get the vibe he doesn't care much for the fans, and he constantly uses us as the enemy to motivate his players. As a Buckeye fan, all other fan bases hate you. It's only been the last few years. I feel like so do the players. It's a bummer. When Tress called us the best damn fans in the land, I think he meant it. We return that love with love. The Woody versus the world tough talk is tough to hear. I've been against Day, but he also had the worst Ohio State loss of the 21st century, which happened to be his fourth Michigan loss in a row. I've not been an enemy of the Buckeyes. He's kind of projecting our disapproval of him onto the team. This natty, assuming they get it done, feels tainted a little with the Michigan loss. It also does a little because I kind of think Ryan Day hates the fans, and by association, me. As an Ohio sports fan, we have the Cleveland, this is for you moment. Just like Tress, I think LeBron meant it. I'll love that Cavs team forever because I felt like they loved me too. Love conquers all, Ryan. Love us and we'll love you back as long as you eventually beat Michigan. That's from Jim. That's like a little bit of a different view on that. I think he is expressing something for some component of the fan base. I'm not going to lie. I felt that from the outside a little bit too of like, is everybody not connected? Just like some of the frustration. And if this solves that, I mean, winning cures everything, does it not? That would be again a fantastic outcome. And I'm sure there are people who disagree with Jim, but I think Jim is expressing something that at least some component of fans feel. This is AJ. Doug, maybe it's too early for reflection, but I think a lot of the survey questions go back to one thing for me. Beating Michigan cements yourself in the Big Ten and builds power towards high school recruiting. Winning a natty, I think, is required to keep your guys. The NIL budget had to be big this year, and the overall goal was to win a natty. You look at this team, and in 2022, they were so close, and in 23, again, we're so close and only lost by a little bit. What's crazy is there is a world where we can be relatively better next year. Most of the major powers are getting new quarterbacks and a lot of portal action, getting a lot of 2021 vibes. So that's like looking ahead a little bit. But the idea, I do think there's some thing that he expressed in the beginning of that AJ did, that is Michigan is more local, a natty is national, obviously. But the point is that college football, it's part of the overall discussion of college football. It's become a more national sport. We've nationalized the playoff. We've nationalized conferences. But the main thing that people have said all along is that at its heart, college football is a regional sport, probably more than any other sport. It's what made college football great. And people were very worried about losing the regionality of this sport during its nationalization. I would argue right now, we have been able to retain both. And then that leads us to this continuing discussion of Michigan versus natty, national versus local. Everything about life is big picture, small picture, national, local, right? All this, all politics is local, but yet what we really focus on is a presidential election. Like all of that kind of idea applies itself to this sport, I think, in a much more interesting and important way than any other sport. So the only advice, again, along the way in all of this is please, anybody in the media or anybody who's trying to say that caring about a Michigan loss is silly or antiquated or not the point, you are cutting out the legs of what makes the sport great, of what people were worried about we were going to lose. And I don't think we've lost it. But if you push rivalries away and try to act like that's not what really matters, then you're doing the thing that you were worried about. And again, I think so many Ohio State fans have a handle on this. Landis and I are informed by it, but like you guys get it. I think you get it in a really good way. And I think this season's been super important for that. So anyway, I don't know. We're just people. This is John. This playoff run has moved my opinion on Day. I previously thought his mental hangups, needing to prove toughness, etc., were the issue, but now I chalk most of it up to inexperience. He needed this loss to Michigan to finally realize he was the problem. Coming into the season, I thought Day had it figured out with leave no doubt. But as it turned out, that was just a slogan that Day thought the players needed. No, he needed that mentality. The players were fine. Same thing on the players seeming to tighten up. They were tight because of him. Hopefully, he is now past overthinking everything. It's not that complicated. Do what you do best. It was a painful lesson. The reason the 21 class that they have no hardware or gold pants is Ryan Day. Winning the natty will wipe away a lot of the pain. So this is one of those two, and this is part of the conversation about Ryan Day, is that he's never been a head coach before. He's not very far into this, and he is learning on the job. And it is a little bit unusual for someone at a place like Ohio State to be learning on the job. But if this is the end result, all right, it took to year 6, but man, in year 6, they figured it out. And now watch, which I think could be the case. And I've been saying this on some other shows. I think if there is going to be a dynasty in college football in the next 5 to 10 years, I think it'll be Ohio State. I think it'll either be nobody or Ohio State. And I just think like what they still have lined up in quarterback play, the way they have their NIL figured out, their ability to recruit at a high school and strategically add in the portal. It doesn't mean Michigan won't be great. It doesn't mean Penn State and Oregon won't be great. It doesn't mean Georgia won't be great. It doesn't mean Texas won't be great. I have real questions about Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. But I think Ohio State has a chance to be the best of them, to bring it all together in the best way in a world where the SEC, and we talked about this on KOTN, again, on the Tuesday KOTN, it was 10 reasons the North is dominating. It's because the advantages that the SEC had with player acquisition in the past, where they were just willing to do some things more or better in paying players or cheating or whatever you want to say. I'm not saying anybody else never did it, but they did it more or better. You take that away, and then you just have a monster. Ohio State's a monster. And they've proven in a lot of ways that they can do what's required. They stumbled, I think, were uncertain at the beginning of NIL. They're all the way in now, and they're so huge, and I think they have the chance to have the resources. They've always had the resources, but now in this new world, apply those resources in a new way that before it was like, oh, they have the nicest locker room. Does that help you win? The resources now, it's more of a direct correlation to how the resources can help you win. And it's hard to out-resource Ohio State. So if you have the right guy in place, and Ryan Day with what he's done in this playoff is saying, yeah, he's the right guy. If you have that and you have the right support from your administration, why wouldn't it be them? So that's kind of where I am. Alex, I'm a very superstitious Ohio State fan. After the Oregon game, I quit watching the Buckeyes at my dad's house. They were 0-4 in their last 4 big games that I watched with my dad. I watched most big games with my college buddies who live close to me. We were in my living room in disbelief on November 30th. I have never been an irrational person when it comes to Ohio State, except in allowing to control my mood every week, huh? And I always thought and hoped that Ryan Day was the guy. He is such a good guy in an industry of turds. And I just have always believed in him and have enjoyed watching his growth as a coach. On November 30th, I gave up. I called my dad during the fight over the flag. I had a theory about how Day should be fired by Sunday and Vrabel should come in and coach the team during the playoffs. I was out. I was defeated. I grew up in the 90s. I was 6 and cried when Biaka Batuka killed us. It's one of my first football memories. The Cooper era taught me that sports hurt. This was the first time it felt like that since I was a kid. Wow. At about 3:45 p.m. on November 30th. My dad and I decided to get tickets for the Tennessee game. I had very low expectations. But then look what happened. So like this is Alex explaining giving up. You may see yourself in that. Derry, I love Ryan Day as a coach and as a person. I wouldn't want anyone else. I was teetering after the Nebraska game, back all the way in after Penn State, out. Completely fine with me. What isn't fine is turtling up. I think he's been listening to you guys when you say, take your shot, and I can't get enough. Please find a way to concentrate this season into a liquid and inject it into my veins. I'm 28, and this is the best season I've ever witnessed. Go Bucks. How about that? Inject it into your veins. Let's see. This is like the idea, I think, of what's going to change for Ryan Day in the future. Most years I would enjoy a roller coaster ride, but not this year. The Ryan Day era has had some of the most gut-wrenching endings to a season any fan base can possibly endure. Clemson, the Georgia playoff game that they should have won, the 2020 title game was a complete mismatch, and multiple straight losses to Michigan. It would be hard to stomach another disaster to end a season without something positive in the Day era to look back on. For comparison, under Urban, the 13 loss to Michigan State was rough and made for a long offseason as a fan. But in 14, they win a title, and it eases the pain of 13. Then 2015 to 18, they come up short due to various reasons, and it didn't feel like the end of the world because 14 was still fresh. If Day and company can get the job done on Monday, it makes it easier to forgive any future shortcomings the program might have. Win convincingly this year, leave no doubt, and then play all the one-score games with Nebraska you won, knowing at least one title was delivered. I think that is going to happen. If Ohio State wins the national championship, your relationship with Ryan Day will change forever. And then your relationship with this version of the program will change forever. Because again, you didn't have this high. We did not have a high for Ohio State fans in this era to match the low of this Michigan loss. And that's where a lot of this is coming from. If you have the high to match any low, it changes how that low makes you feel. And it changes the reactions you have to that low. It doesn't erase it, doesn't 1,000% forgive it, but it changes your big picture view of it. Ryan, Longtime day supporter, but November 30th was my breaking point. I'm now all back in, but there are still lingering questions for me about Michigan and offensive line recruiting and development. As for Michigan versus the playoffs, winning a natty with no Michigan win makes this season a 9 out of a 10 for me. It just can't be a perfect season with that loss, especially this year. If Oregon was our only loss, it would be a 10 out of 10. I suppose I'd rank them as equally important, but if you don't make a deep playoff run, you better beat Michigan. So that's kind of the deal, right? I think that was well said. 9 out of 10. It can't be a 10 out of 10. I think that's right. This is Grant, always been in. Ever since NIL and especially the playoffs were expanded, I treated my fandom more like the pro-style outlook in regard to their record and my expectations on day. I've loved Ohio State since I could remember. My love hasn't lessened from my childhood. It's evolved as the climate in college football has. The Michigan game will always mean a lot. However, as long as the Buckeyes are playoff bound, it won't make or break my feelings of a season like it used to. After the 2019 season, I knew that Day was going to be an excellent coach and hopefully bring titles along with him. I think the success at Bama and Georgia makes people forget how darn hard it is to win a title. Day has done a great job with this team and being the football coach. Does he need to beat the Skunk Weasels? Yes, and soon. 4 losses in a row is bad, and how they lost was terrible. However, that one game shouldn't be what decides if the season is a success. We are lucky to have Day. I don't believe Ohio State is always going to be good, and we've had extremely good fortune to have hired great coaches since Tressel. I'll get off my soapbox. Win or lose this championship game, they have my fandom, respect, and love. How firm they friendship. Go Bucks. Beat ND. That's Grant. So we can't do them all. We can't do them all. I do think as much as the two-path thing, I think if you're not doing one, you kind of have to do the other. So I do think and this is the thing, it's easier to just beat Michigan. That's one game. It's one team. They might not be good. It's easier to beat Michigan. But the idea that's like, well, if you don't beat Michigan, you better win the national title. That can sound like a crazy thing. But when Ohio State's not winning a national title and people have those standards and hopes, if you're beating Michigan, it's like, well, at least we're beating Michigan. So that's where, so the Tressel is interesting because Tressel got it in year 2, but in the last 8 years was a national championship pursuit that came up just short every time, but you were always beating Michigan. And this is why I still feel for Coop, because Coop couldn't beat Michigan, but don't you think he would have gotten a national title? And then Cooper can't beat Michigan, but at least he has a title or 2. It changes the whole thing. But if the synopsis is, if you're not doing one, you better do the other, I think that's right. And so winning this title affects the view of the 0-4. But when you're 0-4 and you're also not winning a national title, then it's like, well, what is this? But I think you've got to do one. I think you got to do one. This is Pat. Good one from Pat. We'll end this soon. I can't get to all of them. About the Michigan loss. I was disappointed about the loss, but I did not go over the edge like many did. I thought I reacted reasonably to the loss. Yes, I want them to beat Michigan, but with age, I think I can put the loss in perspective. And I don't like how the media and fans reacted. It is not healthy and puts too much pressure on these young men. I understand they should be held to a high standard, but the extent of the reaction was just too much. I am proud of Day as our coach. The recruits and players love him. He cares about his team and coaches, and he tries to do the right thing. He is a great recruiter, which is huge in the new world of college football. I think he is learning and getting better every year. Not sure I can name a coach I would rather have coaching the Buckeyes. So I thought that was a good one from Pat, kind of acknowledging that like the pressure is a lot. This one I thought was good from Howard. Howard and Charlotte. Sorry, it's a little long, but like everybody could preface their text with that. But long is good sometimes. This is without a doubt the season that I feel the most emotionally and personally invested in, which hasn't been a conscious decision. I've grown up loving this team, but the years of watching them fight, grow, struggle, love, and inevitably persevere the way that we've seen repeatedly on a micro and macro scale throughout this season specifically is the kind of story that totally grips the mind, heart, and soul. I absolutely love this team and our coach, and I am really picking up on an opportunity that's growing to capitalize on some program momentum right now that would extend beyond this next game. It just feels like something has been unlocked in Day. And not to speak too soon, but it feels like it could be the dam breaking loose. Also, I haven't heard anyone mention this, but recall the first time Travion ever made you say, wow, in Scarlet and Gray. It was in the first game he ever played as a Buckeye against Minnesota on a similar game-changing screenplay that he housed for 70. Just what a story all the way around. That got me emotional thinking about that in particular last night. That's really good from Howard, right? Remember that? First game against the freshman up in Minnesota on a Thursday night. But I like the idea that for someone to be the most personally and emotionally invested that they've ever been is interesting. This is Michael. This was the first year of this playoff. No one really knew how it could impact the season or impact a loss. No one had a vision on what a season could look like. It has given me a new perspective on how to look at next year when the season starts. So I do think we're all going to be changed, I think, by all of this stuff. A couple more. The life marker stuff gets me every time. This is Scott. This season has been one to remember for sure. Capping this year off with the championship would be an exclamation point on the final season my wife and I have with no kids. Thankfully, we only live 45 minutes from AT&T Stadium, so it was no big deal to take my 7 months pregnant wife to the game. Regardless of what happens Monday, next year and beyond, I'll always remember that game as one of the last big things my wife and I got to do before our lives change on March 10th. I can't wait to spend next fall watching Ohio State games with my daughter. Maybe Landis's smooth baritones on KOTN will help her fall asleep in the offseason. That's Scott in Dallas-Fort Worth, formerly Scott in Indy. What about my smooth baritone? No one ever wants to fall asleep to my voice. Your baby could sleep to this. All right. This one I thought was an interesting way of explaining this, and this is Aaron, who's as loyal as they come. I've been a staunch defender of Ryan Day throughout his tenure. Even over these past 2 years when my college football buddies who are fans of other teams thought I was nuts. By all accounts, he's a good man. His players largely adore him, and he wins. Football aside, I hold Day's mental health advocacy very close to my heart. Before the game this season, I composed a post for an online college football forum I belong to, doubling down on both my defense of Day and of Will Howard. Then November 30th happened. I felt betrayed. If I were an On3 graphic designer, I'd have used a picture of Ryan Day with the word betrayal taking up half the photo. I still didn't want him to be fired. But for the first time, I questioned his fit for the program. It made me sad. I felt like I was betraying him too. Now, I'm back to where I was pre the game in 2024. Day is who I thought he was in the best way, and I shall continue to defend him. I think most people forget that he's only 45. He's my age, for crying out loud. This is his first head coaching gig, and he's been learning on the job. No easy feat at a program as vaunted as Ohio State. Certainly he's flawed, but the flaws I see are beyond forgivable. Too loyal, too reticent to pull the trigger on dismissing staff. Both too trusting and not trusting enough. I don't know who else other fans want as head coach. I am back on the Day train. So I thought that to feel betrayed by that loss, I think is not too far. Not too far, because like it was all the hopes and expectations, right, of this season, and then to have that performance, which is why we got to where we are. All right, Javante sent a great one. I think I've come to accept that the segment of fans that believe beating Michigan is the sole priority will not come off that stance. Some of them have, Javante, but they are necessary to the overall experience of being a Buckeye fan. But the reality of the situation now is that Ohio State has long been a national program with national title dreams. And Ryan Day is a head coach that can lead us to prosperity for years to come. For now, the Michigan game is a mental hurdle he must navigate. But this title should take a winning that game once again. Ryan Day coached against Michigan better when he treated them as a nameless, faceless opponent on the road. No, excuse me, on the road to bigger dreams. He treated Michigan as a nameless, faceless opponent on the road to bigger dreams, and that's how he has to handle it for now. I think Michigan cheating to beat us dragged Ryan Day into the dirt for years, and he lost his own identity trying to find what was always there. As long as the game is played straight up with Ryan Day and the program playing at their best, Michigan, more often than not, will not beat us. And I think the majority of the fan base should be able to understand that. That, I think, is potentially a very interesting and very correct read, that the Connor Stallion stuff, because Ryan Day didn't grow up in it, that made it personal for Day, and that he wanted to prove something against Jim Harbaugh and then against like the remnants of the Harbaugh team. And that it was personal, like Harbaugh today, and like and some of the accusations that were thrown around about, Michigan fans claiming that Ryan Day's family had anything to do with this kind of stuff. I did think that made it, like, Ohio State, Michigan is personal. I think that made that Day Harbaugh personal in a way that was not productive. And I do think, and there was enough of that maybe still lingering around. And then now, like, if that's all just gone, if the Harbaugh part of this is gone completely, Sharon Moore's still there, but you just let that go. And now it's Ohio State, Michigan. But if you can let that go, I think Javonte probably is onto something here. This Ben said that he thought the Michigan game was coaching malpractice. We need to figure that out, but I'm tired of talking about that game. It hurt, it's over, and we're about to accomplish something that 99% of programs only experience once or twice in your lifetime. So, like, that I get. Like, it was, right? It was awful, but we're past it is probably the thing where we're at, and then we'll do this last one. This is family stuff. This is Nick. I have been listening to the pod for over a year now, but this is the first month I've actually subscribed to the texts. I really appreciate what you guys do for Ohio State fans, football fans, and the effort you put into keeping us connected. The level-headed and knowledgeable perspective that you constantly provide is much needed in an era of negative echo chambers, so thank you. After the transfer additions and the seniors announcing their return for a final season, this year was destined to be one of the most exciting seasons in my 29 years of being a Buckeye. But a month before kickoff, it quickly became a season I was dreading. It was my first season without my dad. My dad very unexpectedly passed away in July. As cliche as it is to say, my dad was my best friend. We talked daily about a variety of things, but the two things that bonded us more than anything were the Cincinnati Reds and Ohio State. While Ohio State was not the be-all, end-all to him, he loved and cared for them deeply. We were so excited for this year to start. I would get a clip from him on a random day in April of Jeremiah Smith's high school tape where he'd say, "This dude is a freak." We'd send each other random clips from random seasons just to get us excited for this season. We knew the potential for a fun season was incredibly high. He liked Ryan Day, but he wasn't as high on him as I was. This season has been a challenging one for me because I can't watch a Jeremiah Smith touchdown, a Travion Henderson run, or a Caleb Downs tackle with him. And then unfortunately it cut off. But here's the point. That's why sports is great. So you guys all relate to a season through your friends and family. These seasons do provide markers in all of our lives. I think we all understand that. And we do shows like this sometimes, but the number one greatest thing about sports is the way it connects us to friends and family. And so if this playoff run has enhanced that, if the Michigan loss somehow enhanced that, I do think going through tough times together can bring you out on the other side even stronger. I hope the end result is Ohio State fans being bonded to this team and this program and these players and these coaches even more. But more importantly, I hope it means that you are bonded to each other, that you are bonded to your parents and your children and your aunts and your uncles and your grandparents and your cousins and your friends and your college buddies and your high school friends and the people at work. And if this has been something that you have lived through the lows, and we've covered the lows, and the effort, the idea of this show is not to wallow in anything, but it was to acknowledge that it's been tough. And it is to acknowledge that right now it's awesome. So for you guys, I'm excited for that. We're grateful that you allow us to be a tiny part of your incredible Ohio State fandom. We certainly do this with all Northern teams now on KOTN. And in the end, all we want any Northern fan to be is connected to their team and excited about what's going on. We want your Saturdays to be great. And so this has been a season that you Ohio State fans certainly will never forget. So thanks for letting us be a part of it. I'm sorry to everybody. I mean, I have another 20 that I pulled that I just can't get to. Someone did say we need a docuseries, Wild Ride of a Year from Jordan. If they pull this out, I think this year needs a docuseries about how crazy of a season this was. So like Landis has you covered on that. We'll work on that. But for now, thanks to our producer, Mike Yerstowski. It's always great to be here with you guys. So on behalf of Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises. We will have, what will we have? We got to figure it out. Just hang with us. We have a bunch of KOTN stuff coming on that channel, and we have a bunch of stuff happening on the podcast on this channel, and we will get another Kings of Columbus to you sometime after Monday night as soon as possible. That's all we can promise you. Anyway, thanks for being here. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of Columbus.